At Christmas dinner, I overheard my parents planning something I never expected. They wanted to move my sister's family into my $450,000 condo for free. I smiled, stayed quiet, and let them talk, not knowing I had already set a plan in motion. By the time the presents were opened and the wine was poured, I had made a move they would never see coming. 78 missed calls later, they realized it too late. What exactly did I do? You'll find out, but only if you stay until the very end. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and hit subscribe so you never miss our real-life twists. My name is Elizabeth Monroe, and this is the Christmas that changed everything. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to Olive Revenge Stories, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. The thing about growing up in a family like mine is that you learn early on that love comes with conditions attached. It's not the overt kind of conditional love that gets advertised in those made-for-TV movies where the parent is obviously cold and dismissive. It's the subtle kind, the kind that wraps itself around your heart like ivy climbing a wall, so gradually that you don't even realize you're being strangled until you're already suffocating. My parents, Margaret and David Monroe, were what you'd call successful people in the eyes of the community. My father was a cardiologist, respected in his field, always invited to the right dinner parties, always the one people called when they wanted to discuss their health concerns at social gatherings. My mother was a former investment banker turned philanthropist, and she volunteered at the country club's charity functions with a kind of dedication that earned her recognition in the local newspaper at least twice a year. They lived in a 7-bedroom, 5-bath house in the most exclusive neighborhood in our city. They drove luxury cars. They vacationed in places that required passport applications. They sent their children to private schools and paid cash for everything. From the outside, we looked perfect. The Monroe family was held up as an example of what success looked like, what a functioning family should be. Inside was a different story altogether, and it's a story that took me 3 decades to understand. I have one sibling, my older sister, Rebecca. Rebecca is 6 years older than me, and if you ask anyone in our family, really ask anyone, they will tell you that Rebecca hung the moon and the stars. Rebecca is the kind of person who is born with every advantage, and then she somehow earned even more advantages on top of that, as if life itself had decided to conspire in her favor. She was beautiful, but not in an intimidating way. She was the kind of beautiful that made people want to be near her, want to help her, want to give her things. She had a charisma that I can only describe as magnetic. Wherever Rebecca went, people's eyes followed. Rebecca was the golden child, the one who did everything right, the one who was born with the kind of confidence that the rest of us spend our entire lives trying to manufacture. She went to an Ivy League school on a full scholarship, which was impressive until you realized that she probably could have gone there even without the scholarship because of her family's connections and her perfect test scores and her perfect GPA. She became a marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company by the time she was 28 years old. She married a wonderful man named Michael within 2 years of graduating from college. Michael, who was also successful, also charming, also the kind of person who looked like he stepped out of a catalog. She immediately started having children, and she did that with the same ease with which she did everything else. By the time I was 18 years old, Rebecca had a perfect life, a perfect house in the suburbs with a wraparound porch, perfect children who were polite and well-behaved, a perfect marriage where they seemed to genuinely love each other, a perfect career where she got promoted every couple of years and made the kind of money that allowed her to live a lifestyle most people only dream about. And everyone in our family made absolutely sure I knew it. I watched my parents' faces light up like they had won the lottery whenever Rebecca walked into a room. I listened to my mother brag about Rebecca's accomplishments at every opportunity, at church, at her book club, at the grocery store when she ran into neighbors. I watched my father attend every single one of Rebecca's college events, her job promotions, her children's birthday parties, her anniversaries, her holiday gatherings. My father took time off work for Rebecca. My father rearranged his schedule for Rebecca. My father looked at Rebecca like she had invented hope itself. And then there was me. I was not the golden child. I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who had to prove her worth over and over again, like I was perpetually sitting for an entrance exam I could never quite pass. While Rebecca was celebrated for her natural charm and her effortless success, I was told to be grateful for what I had and not to get too ambitious because life was about balance. While Rebecca's college fund was substantial enough to cover her Ivy League education with room to spare, mine was adequate, which is a polite way of saying it was barely enough to cover a state school. While Rebecca got a new car for her 16th birthday, a sleek BMW that made her the envy of every teenager in our town, I got a part-time job at a grocery store and was told that it would teach me responsibility and build my character. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me. They did. I think they did, anyway. But their love always felt like it came with an asterisk, a caveat, a question mark hanging over it. It felt conditional in a way that Rebecca's never did. It felt like something I had to earn rather than something I was entitled to simply by being their daughter. So I did what I always do when I feel like I'm not enough. I worked. I studied harder than anyone else in my high school, made the dean's list for all 4 years of college, and spent my undergraduate years taking on internships and side projects that most students wouldn't even consider. I started my career in real estate development at 23 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in business and a minor in finance, armed with a determination that came from knowing that I had to make something of myself because nobody else was going to hand it to me. I wasn't looking for recognition. I wasn't doing it to prove anything to my family, though that's what I told myself back then. I was just trying to build something that was entirely mine, something that couldn't be given to someone else, something that couldn't be taken away or redistributed or sacrificed for the greater good of the family. I wanted to build my own life. By the time I was 32 years old, I had done exactly that. I had purchased a stunning 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath condo in the heart of the city, a modern building that was designed by a famous architect and had been featured in several design magazines. The building had floor-to-ceiling windows in the main living areas that overlooked the skyline. You could see the downtown. From almost every room, and at night, the lights of the city twinkled like diamonds. The property cost $450,000, and I had paid for every single penny of it myself through a combination of smart investments, strategic career moves, and honestly, just grinding harder than anyone else I knew. There was no family money involved in this purchase. There was no inheritance. There was no helping hand from my parents, no co-signer, no safety net. It was earned through late nights, through saying no to vacations and expensive dinners, through investing my bonuses back into my future instead of spending them on things that would make me happy right now. It was earned through the kind of determination that only comes from knowing deep down that you have nothing and nobody else to rely on but yourself. The condo became my sanctuary in a way that nothing else in my life ever had been. I furnished it carefully, not just buying things because they were trendy or expensive, but selecting pieces that meant something to me, pieces that reflected who I actually was rather than who I thought I was supposed to be. The living room had a fireplace that I could never use because it was decorative, but I kept a stack of good books nearby anyway, because I liked to sit there on Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee and read for hours. The master bedroom had an en-suite bathroom with a rainfall shower head and a soaking tub where I could relax after long weeks at work. The kitchen had marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, and I actually cooked in that kitchen sometimes, experimenting with recipes I found online, enjoying the process of creating something delicious just for myself. Every single square inch of that space represented something to me. Every lamp, every piece of art, every throw pillow represented my independence, my success, my ability to take care of myself without needing approval or permission from anyone. I had finally built something that was entirely mine. I had finally proven that I didn't need to be the golden child to have a good life. I didn't need my parents' approval. I didn't need their recognition. I didn't need to measure myself against my sister anymore. I was enough, all by myself, in my beautiful condo that I had earned through my own effort and intelligence and sheer force of will. And then came Christmas of 2023. Christmas in the Monroe family is not a casual affair. Our family has a tradition of gathering at my parents' house on Christmas Eve for dinner and celebration. It's always a big, elaborate event. Parents, siblings, spouses, children, usually somewhere around 20 people in total. The Monroe family Christmas is something of a production, a carefully orchestrated performance that requires months of planning and execution. My mother, Margaret, orchestrates the entire event like a symphony conductor preparing for opening night at Carnegie Hall, ensuring that everything from the table settings to the menu to the seating chart reflects the kind of controlled perfection she has always demanded from life. She sends out formal invitations, actual printed, calligraphed invitations in November. She plans a 7-course menu starting in October. She has the house professionally decorated by the same firm that does high-end Christmas displays for wealthy families. It's beautiful, and it's impressive, and it's absolutely exhausting to be around. I arrived at my parents' house around 5 in the evening on December 24th, driving through snow-covered streets, listening to Christmas music on the radio, trying to prepare myself mentally for the night ahead. The house was already decorated within an inch of its life. There were white twinkling lights draped along the staircase like a cascade of stars. Evergreen garland with deep red ribbon hung from every doorway, and the smell of fresh pine filled every room. There was a massive Christmas tree in the great room, positioned so that it could be seen from the foyer, that must have cost more than most people's monthly rent. The tree was decorated with gold and silver ornaments, and it was topped with a delicate angel made of porcelain and real feathers. Everything was perfect. Everything was pristine. Everything was exactly the way Margaret Monroe had decided it should be. My mother was in the kitchen overseeing the catering team, even though she had hired professional caterers, because apparently the caterers could not be trusted to prepare food up to her standards without her standing there and watching their every move like a hawk. She was wearing an expensive-looking burgundy dress and heels, and her hair and makeup were perfect in that way that suggested she had spent hours at a salon getting ready for this event. She smiled when she saw me, but it was a tight smile, the kind of smile that suggested she was thinking about something else entirely, probably mentally reviewing her checklist to make sure nothing was going wrong. "Elizabeth, you're here," she said, coming over to kiss me on the cheek in that air kiss way that doesn't involve any actual contact. "Of course I'm here," I said, hugging her. I wouldn't miss it. But the truth was that I had contemplated not coming. I had seriously considered calling and making up an excuse about work or illness or literally anything else that would keep me away from this performance. But I came anyway because that's what I did. I showed up. I participated. I played the role that had been written for me. My father was in his study, streaming a news program from a tablet, his reading glasses perched on his nose in that way that made him look professorial and distinguished. He smiled warmly when he saw me, a genuine smile that actually did reach his eyes, and he got up and gave me a real hug. My father is a good man, I think. He's just a man who has spent so long accommodating everyone else's needs that he's forgotten how to have opinions about anything that matters. "Elizabeth," he said warmly. "It's so good to see you. You look lovely. How have you been?" We talked for a few minutes about my work, about a project I was working on downtown, about nothing important. And then my father said, "Your mother is very excited about tonight. She's been planning this for weeks." Of course she had. I played with my niece and nephew for a while, 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Joshua, who were energetic and loud and completely uninhibited in the way that only young children can be. They wanted to show me their presents, wanted to talk about what they hoped Santa would bring them, wanted to know if I believed in Santa anymore or if I was old now. I played along, and for a moment, I felt something close to happiness. There's something about children that makes it difficult to hold on to anger. And then the moment passed, and reality came rushing back. The dinner was scheduled for 7 o'clock. But like always, things were running behind. My mother was fussing over something in the kitchen, something about the sauce for the duck not being the right consistency. My niece had gotten her dress dirty playing with the cousins and needed to change. My brother-in-law, Michael, was helping my father with something in the garage, something about a light that wasn't working properly. My sister Rebecca was getting her hair fixed because apparently it had gotten messed up during her flight from wherever they had been before the holidays. So around 6:30, I wandered toward the kitchen to see if I could help with anything, thinking maybe I could offer to do something useful, something that would make me feel like I was contributing. And that's when I heard them, my mother and father's voices, coming from the wine cellar just off the kitchen. The door wasn't completely closed, and they were speaking in those low tones that adults use when they think no one else is around, when they're discussing something they know they probably shouldn't be discussing at all, when they're being deliberately secretive. At first, I wasn't going to eavesdrop. I was brought up better than that, my mother had made sure of that, and I don't typically make a habit of listening in on other people's conversations. It's invasive and disrespectful, and it's the kind of thing that people shouldn't do. But then I heard my name, and everything changed. Elizabeth won't mind, my mother was saying, her voice taking on that particular tone it gets when she's decided something, and is now simply finding ways to justify it to everyone else, when she's already made the decision, and she's just constructing the arguments to support it. The condo sits empty most of the time anyway. She works all hours, staying late at the office. She barely uses the place. I felt something go cold inside my chest. I felt my heart rate accelerate. I pressed myself against the wall, making sure I was completely hidden from view. My father's voice came next, a little uncertain, a little worried. But Margaret, it's hers. She bought it. We can absolutely just. My mother interrupted him, and I could hear the familiar note of dismissiveness in her voice, the same tone she had used on me 100 times before, the same tone she used on waiters who brought her the wrong order, or shopkeepers who didn't understand her vision. Rebecca and Michael need a place. His job transfer came through, and they have to be in the city by January. Finding an apartment in this market is impossible. Everything is either overpriced or in a terrible neighborhood, and with the children they need something safe and clean and appropriate. The condo is perfect. It's exactly what they need. And Elizabeth is already established. She can find somewhere else. She's independent. I felt my hands start to shake. I felt like I might actually be sick. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter to steady myself, making sure I didn't make any noise, making sure they didn't know I was there. But what if she says no? My father asked, and I could hear the worry in his voice, the knowledge that what they were discussing was wrong, the fear of confrontation. He knew this was unfair. He knew this was wrong. But like always, he was going to let my mother make the decision and then just go along with it, accepting whatever she decided as inevitable and correct. She won't say no, my mother replied with absolute certainty, with the kind of confidence that only comes from a lifetime of getting your way. Elizabeth always does what's expected of her. She always has. She doesn't have Rebecca's spine. She won't fight us on this. Besides, it's family. Family helps family. If she refuses to help her own sister during a time of need, that's a reflection on her character, not ours. I'll make sure everyone in this family knows it too. I'll tell everyone that she was selfish, that she chose money over family, that she wouldn't help her sister, even though her sister needed her. By the time I'm done, she'll be the villain in this story, not the victim. My mother was actually planning to manipulate my entire family against me if I didn't comply. My mother was planning to poison relationships, to spread her narrative, to make me look like the bad guy if I dared to say no. Well, my father said slowly, maybe we should just ask her first. Maybe we should see what she says before we assume she'll say yes. And give her the opportunity to say no? My mother asked incredulously. David, that's not how this works. We tell her what we're doing, and then she'll feel guilty, and then she'll say yes. That's how it works with Elizabeth. She's easy. Easy. She called me easy, like I was a problem to be solved, like I was something to be managed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was standing there in the hallway with my hand literally shaking on the counter, and I wanted to burst into that wine cellar and scream at them, tell them how unfair this was, tell them that I had worked for this condo, that I had earned it, that I deserved to have something that was entirely mine and not subject to the whims of a family that had never really seen me as a person. But I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I didn't even let them know I was there. Because in that moment I realized something that changed everything, something that shifted my entire understanding of who my family was and what I meant to them. These people, my parents, they didn't see me as a person. They didn't see me as someone with my own needs, my own wants, my own right to make decisions about my own property and my own life. They saw me as a tool, as someone to be manipulated and used for their own convenience, as someone to be managed and controlled. My mother was right about one thing. I had always done what was expected of me. I had always been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who didn't make waves, the one who accepted what life gave her and said thank you for it. I had spent my entire life being easy, being compliant, being the person that everyone could count on to just go along with whatever they wanted. But those days were over. They just didn't know it yet. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, composed my face into a neutral expression, and walked back into the living room like I had never heard anything at all. I sat down next to Rebecca, smiled at her, asked her about her children, asked her about Michael's new job, asked her about the move to the city. I sipped my wine and tried to look interested when she talked about schools in the neighborhood and how hard it had been to find a place. All the while, my mind was working, calculating, planning. All the while, I was making decisions that would change everything. A few minutes later, my parents emerged from the wine cellar as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just been discussing how to manipulate me into giving them the thing I had worked hardest for. My mother was carrying an expensive bottle of Pinot Noir, and my father was right behind her with his usual resigned expression. They didn't even look at me, and I realized that they had never actually planned to ask me my permission in any genuine way. They had decided what they wanted to do, and they were now in the process of figuring out how to make me comply, how to manipulate me into saying yes, so they could maintain the fiction that I had chosen this, that I had agreed to it, that it was my decision. The dinner progressed as it always did, following the same pattern it had followed for years. We sat around the long table with its white linen tablecloth and expensive china, positioned so that we could see the Christmas tree from our seats. We said grace, though I noticed my mother didn't actually close her eyes during the prayer, and I wondered what she was doing instead, probably mentally reviewing her checklist to make sure nothing was going wrong with her carefully orchestrated evening. We passed food around in a kind of synchronized dance that we've perfected over decades. We talked about normal things, safe things, things that wouldn't cause conflict. My parents asked Rebecca about her job, about how the transition was going, about whether they were excited about moving to the city. They asked Michael about his new company, about what his role entailed, about whether the position was as good as it had seemed when he was recruited. They asked my niece and nephew about school, about their friends, about what they wanted for Christmas. Then my father turned to me and asked if I was still working in real estate, and when I said yes, my mother quickly changed the subject, asking someone else about something else entirely. It was subtle, but the message was clear. My work didn't matter. My career wasn't interesting. I wasn't the story worth hearing. By the time dessert came around, a 7-layer chocolate cake that my mother had ordered from an artisanal bakery downtown, because of course she had, because everything in our family had to be expensive and exclusive and the very best, I was ready. I had made my decision, and I had made it with complete clarity and certainty. I was going to protect what was mine. I was going to stop letting my family treat me like I didn't matter, like I didn't deserve to have boundaries, like my needs and my accomplishments were somehow less important than everyone else's. And I was going to do it in a way that would make sure they could never do this to me again. I was going to be strategic. I was going to be decisive. I was going to burn this bridge so completely that there would be no possibility of them trying to cross it again. After dinner, while everyone was in the living room opening presents, I excused myself and went to the bathroom. But I wasn't really going to the bathroom. Instead, I locked myself in there, pulled out my phone with shaking hands, and I made a call. I called my real estate agent, Derek Chun, a brilliant man in his early 40s who had helped me find the condo in the first place. Derek had been in the real estate business for almost 20 years, and he had seen every kind of situation imaginable. He knew properties, he knew markets, and he knew how to move fast when he needed to. The phone rang twice before he answered, sounding surprised to hear from me at 7:30 on Christmas Eve. "Elizabeth," he said warmly. "Merry Christmas. Is everything okay?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I told him that I needed to put my condo on the market immediately. He was confused, asked me if I was sure, asked me what was going on, if something had happened with the property. I could hear the concern in his voice. I told him that nothing was wrong with the property itself, but that something had changed in my personal circumstances, and I needed to sell as quickly as possible. I need this done before January 1st, I told him, my voice completely steady and calm even though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Whatever it takes. I'll sign all the papers, I'll do all the inspections, I'll handle all the details.
Just make it happen.
Can you do that for me? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Derek was not the kind of person to ask a lot of questions, but he did ask, "Are you sure about this? You love that place. You've talked about it being your forever home." "I'm sure," I told him, and I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "It's time for a change. That's all I can say right now. Can you make this happen?" He said he would try, said that moving fast in the real estate market wasn't always easy, but said that given the current demand in the neighborhood, given that it was a high-end property in a desirable location, he thought we could find a buyer fairly quickly. "The market is good right now," he said. "People are looking for properties in that area. I think we can move this. I'll get started first thing tomorrow morning. Listing tomorrow, and we should have interest within days." "What's changed?" he asked me again. "Nothing," I told him, which was a lie. Everything had changed. I just need a change. I hung up the phone, washed my hands, stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long moment, and then I went back to join my family. That's when my mother found her moment to strike. I was opening a present from my parents, a nice scarf, expensive but impersonal, something that had clearly been purchased by an assistant or picked out by my mother in a department store without actually thinking about what I would like when she said it. She said it loud enough for the whole family to hear. She said it in that way that suggested she had planned this moment, had orchestrated it, had decided that Christmas Eve was the perfect time to present this as a done deal. "Elizabeth, honey, we wanted to talk to you about something. It's actually kind of exciting, and we've already worked out most of the details." I set down the scarf, took a sip of wine, and looked at my mother with what I hoped was a neutral expression, what I hope was the expression of someone who is not dying inside, who is not furious, who is not already planning the destruction of everything my family thought they knew about me. "Oh," I said simply, and I was proud of how calm I sounded. "Rebecca and Michael have had to relocate for work," my mother began, launching into her prepared explanation with the kind of smooth professionalism that she had clearly been practicing in the wine cellar. "Michael's company transferred him, and they need to find a place in the city, and as you can imagine, the market is absolutely ridiculous right now. Everything is so expensive, and neighborhoods aren't always safe for the children. We've been thinking and we realized you have that beautiful condo that sits empty most of the time anyway. What if Rebecca and Michael and the children just moved in there? It's the perfect solution. You'd be helping the family during a time of need, and the condo wouldn't be sitting empty. Everyone wins." I watched my mother's face as she said this, and I could see in her expression that she genuinely believed she was being reasonable. She genuinely believed that this made sense, that this was a fair request, that asking me to give up my own property for the convenience of her preferred daughter was somehow logical and just. She genuinely believed that I would say yes because I had always said yes before. She genuinely believed that I didn't matter enough to have a say in what happened to my own life. "How long would they stay?" I asked calmly, and I was impressed by my own composure. "Oh, well, just until they get on their feet," my mother said, waving a hand dismissively, as if the duration of time was an insignificant detail. "Maybe 6 months? A year at most. It's really not forever. It's just until they can save up for a down payment and buy their own place."
6 months, she said.
"A year at most," which anyone who has ever lived with someone knows is code for indefinitely. Because that's how these situations always go in real life, not the way my mother was imagining it. Someone moves into your space just temporarily, and then they get comfortable and they stay longer than planned, and they start talking about making improvements, and then they get attached, and then they can't find a place they like, and then something comes up, and before you know it, 5 years have passed and they're still there, and you can't ask them to leave because it would make you the bad guy. My parents hadn't built in any exit strategy. They had just decided what they wanted and expected me to allow it, expected me to be the easy one, expected me to comply like I always did. "I need to think about it," I told them, still calm, still neutral, my voice giving away nothing. My mother's face fell slightly, disappointed by my lack of immediate compliance, frustrated that I wasn't just saying yes like she had anticipated. "There's nothing to think about, sweetie," she said in that patronizing tone that made me want to scream, that made me want to flip the table over, that made me want to tell her exactly what I had heard in the wine cellar. "It's your sister. It's family. That's what families do. They help each other." "I still need to think about it," I repeated, and this time I looked her directly in the eye, and I let her see for just a moment that I was not the person she thought I was, that I was not going to be manipulated, that I was not going to be easy. "It's a big decision. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you." My father, sitting across the table, looked relieved that there was at least going to be a delay before I inevitably capitulated, before I inevitably did what was expected of me. Rebecca looked uncertain, as if she wasn't entirely sure whether my hesitation was genuine or just a formality that I was going through before I agreed. Michael looked deeply uncomfortable with the entire conversation, and I could see in his face that he knew this was wrong, that he was uncomfortable with asking someone to give up their home, that he would have handled this differently if he had been given the choice. My mother looked like she wanted to say something else, to push harder, to get me to agree right then and there on Christmas Eve, in front of the entire family so that there would be no backing out. But she didn't. She just smiled that tight smile and said, "Of course, honey. We knew you'd want a little time to process this exciting opportunity." An exciting opportunity. She called me housing her sister's family in my condo without compensation, without a defined timeline, without any real discussion or negotiation. An exciting opportunity. I finished my wine and excused myself early that evening, saying I had a headache, which was only partially a lie. My head was pounding.
My heart was racing.
Everything inside me felt like it was vibrating at a frequency that humans shouldn't be able to produce. I drove back to my condo, let myself inside with my key, walked through the space I had earned and built and paid for, and stood in my living room for a long time, just looking around at everything I had built, everything I had earned, everything that represented my independence and my success. And I thought about my life, about how much of it I had spent trying to be the person everyone else wanted me to be rather than the person I actually was. I thought about how much energy I had invested in seeking my family's approval, their recognition, their respect, even though they had given me countless reasons to believe that I would never have those things. I thought about how I had sacrificed so much of my own happiness and my own success trying to prove that I was worthy, trying to prove that I mattered, trying to prove that I deserved to be treated like an equal rather than an afterthought. And I realized that I was done. I was absolutely and completely done. I was done trying. I was done hoping. I was done being the easy one. I went to bed that night, and I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed thinking about the condo, thinking about Rebecca, thinking about my parents, thinking about what I was about to do. And in the morning, when I woke up, I had complete clarity about my path forward. I was going to protect myself. I was going to set a boundary that they could not cross, could not negotiate, could not manipulate their way around. By January 2nd, Derek called me with news. He had worked fast, faster than I had even dared to hope. He had received an offer on the condo. An excellent offer, actually, from a young couple who had just gotten engaged and were looking for their first property together in the city. They were pre-approved for the mortgage. They had no contingencies. They wanted to close quickly. And they could close by January 23rd if everything moved smoothly with inspections and paperwork. "It's a good offer," Derek told me, his voice carrying a note of excitement that suggested he thought I would be happy about this. "Really good. They seem very motivated, and frankly, at this time of year, motivated buyers are rare. You'd be smart to take it." "Take it," I told him immediately. "Make it happen." "Elizabeth, are you sure?" Derek asked. He had known me for 4 years, and he knew that I loved that condo. He knew that I had talked about it being my forever home, that I had said I would probably never sell it, that I had painted myself into a corner of permanence. "I've never heard you talk about selling it before. Something must have happened. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but I want to make sure you're not doing something you'll regret." "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," I told him, and I meant it. "Close the deal." I hung up the phone, and then I called my real estate attorney, a woman named Susan Park who had helped me with the initial purchase of the property. I told her that I was selling the property and that I would be moving the sale through as quickly as legally possible. I told her that I would likely not be available for certain communications or meetings, and that if anyone contacted her claiming to represent me or claiming to have any interest in the property, I wanted her to refer them directly to Derek Shin and to give her no further information. Is everything okay? Susan asked, and I could hear the concern in her voice. She had worked with me enough times to know that something was different, something was wrong, something had changed. Everything is fine, I told her, which was technically true even though it was also a complete lie. I'm just protecting myself. That's all. The next week was surreal. I went to work, I did my job, I responded to emails and attended meetings, and all the while, I had this secret burning inside me like a fire that I couldn't extinguish.
It consumed me.
It distracted me. It made me feel alive in a way that I hadn't felt in years. My mother called me 3 times that week asking if I had thought about the situation, and each time I gave her the same response, delivered in a voice that was calm and non-committal. I'm still thinking.
Give me some more time.
My father texted me once asking if we could discuss it, if we could maybe meet for coffee and talk it through, if I would be open to hearing more about why this was important to the family. I didn't respond to that. I couldn't respond to that without either saying yes or revealing that I had overheard everything. Rebecca sent me a message saying that she hoped I'd be able to help them out, that it would really mean a lot, that maybe we could talk soon, that she wanted to discuss the logistics of it all. I didn't respond to that either. I couldn't respond without either lying or telling her the truth, and telling her the truth would have resulted in her telling our mother that I knew, and then everything would unravel before I was ready.
So I simply didn't respond.
I let my silence speak for itself. On January 18th, the inspection on the condo came back clean. The young couple's inspector found nothing wrong with the property. They were thrilled. They wanted to move forward immediately. On January 20th, all the paperwork was finalized. The closing documents were signed. The title was transferred. The young couple wired the money into my account, and the condo officially became their property. It was done. Derek called me to tell me, and I felt this enormous sense of relief wash over me, this sense of vindication, this sense that I had done something that actually mattered. I had protected myself. It was done. My condo was sold. There was no way my parents could move Rebecca's family into a property I no longer owned. There was no way they could manipulate me into giving them something I no longer had to give. It was finished. On January 22nd, my mother called me. She didn't even say hello, didn't even bother with pleasantries. The first words out of her mouth were urgent, angry, shocked. Why did Rebecca tell me that you sold your condo? My heart was beating fast, so fast that I could feel it in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had prepared for this moment. I had practiced what I would say in the mirror. I had rehearsed my tone, my expression, everything. Because I did, I said simply, keeping my voice level and emotionless. I sold it. You what? My mother shrieked into the phone, and I could hear the disbelief in her voice, the anger, the sense that something she had decided was supposed to happen had somehow not happened. Elizabeth, what are you talking about? You can't sell the condo. Rebecca is counting on that. We had a plan. You had a plan. I corrected her, and there was a sharpness in my voice that I didn't even try to conceal. I didn't agree to it. I didn't say yes. You decided what you wanted to do with my property, and you went ahead and told me about it like it was already settled, like I didn't have a choice, like my opinion didn't matter. Well, you're right. It wasn't settled. Because I sold it. It's gone. It's no longer mine, which means it's no longer your resource to distribute. My mother was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, could almost see her trying to process this information, trying to figure out how I had dared to do something without her permission. And then she started yelling. She told me I was being selfish. She told me I was being cruel to my sister. She told me that I was destroying Rebecca's life because of my own pride and my own ego. She told me that a good daughter would have helped her sister, would have sacrificed her own comfort for the good of the family. She told me that I was a disappointment, that she had always known I was cold and ungrateful, and now I had proven it to the entire family. She said things that I won't repeat here, things that were designed to hurt, designed to make me feel guilty, designed to make me question my decision. I listened to all of it without responding, without getting angry, without defending myself. I just listened and let her words wash over me, and I realized that nothing she could say would change my mind. Nothing would make me regret this. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, when she finally ran out of ammunition, I simply said, "The condo is no longer mine. This situation is no longer your decision to make. This is no longer something that's any of your business. Goodbye, Mother." And I hung up the phone. Within hours, the calls started. My father called me 6 times, leaving voicemails each time, his voice getting more and more desperate, more and more pleading. My sister called me 9 times, her messages ranging from confused to angry to pleading to angry again. My brother-in-law called me twice, which surprised me because Michael is generally a reasonable person, and his first message expressed his understanding of my position but also asked if there was any way we could work something out, if I would reconsider. My mother called me again and again and again, until I finally blocked her number. By the end of the first day, I had received 78 calls across all the people in my family trying to convince me to undo the sale, to do something, to fix the situation, to be reasonable, to be understanding, to be the daughter and sister they thought I should be. I ignored all of them. I turned off notifications. I put my phone on silent. I muted everyone who tried to contact me. And I moved on with my life. The guilt came, of course. That's the thing about breaking from your family, especially when you've been conditioned your whole life to be the reliable one, the helpful one, the one who doesn't make waves, the one who puts everyone else's needs before your own. Part of me felt terrible. Part of me wondered if I had overreacted, if I had let my anger drive me to do something unnecessarily cruel, something that I would regret later. Part of me actually did feel sorry for Rebecca, who through no fault of her own had been caught in the middle of a conflict between me and our parents, who was probably confused and hurt and uncertain of what she had done to deserve this. But then I would remember my mother's voice in the wine cellar, saying that I didn't have Rebecca's spine, saying that I would never fight them, saying that I would just comply, because that's what I always did. And the guilt would fade, replaced by a kind of grim certainty that I had done the right thing, that I had protected myself, that I had set a boundary that needed to be set, that I had done it in a way that was absolutely final, that was absolutely clear, that left no room for negotiation or manipulation or the possibility that they might try again. By February, things had settled into a strange kind of quiet. The initial shock had worn off. My family had stopped trying to convince me to undo the sale because, obviously, the sale couldn't be undone. My father tried to reach out to me, suggesting via email that maybe we could meet for coffee and talk about things, that maybe we could work towards some kind of reconciliation or understanding. I declined politely. My mother sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter, which made the sting of it even worse, that began by apologizing for her harsh words but quickly pivoted into explaining why she had been right to suggest the arrangement in the first place, explaining why family should help family, and suggesting that I still had time to reconsider my life choices and my attitude toward my family obligations. I read it, felt nothing, and threw it away. Rebecca called me once, and when I picked up, expecting anger or resentment, she instead asked me if I was okay, if something had happened that she didn't know about, if I wanted to talk about it. There was genuine concern in her voice, and for a moment, I wavered. But then I remembered that she had been part of the plan, that she had been willing to take my home without asking, that she had trusted our mother's assurance that I would just say yes. So I told her that I was fine, that nothing else had happened, and that I was happy for her that she and Michael had finally found an apartment on their own. She seemed confused by this response and asked me if I was angry at her. I told her that I wasn't angry at her specifically, but that I had realized something important. I had spent too much of my life trying to be the person everyone else wanted me to be, and I was done with that. She asked me what I meant, and I told her that I would reach out when I was ready to have that conversation. Then I hung up. It's been 9 months now since that Christmas Eve. It's been 9 months since I sold the condo and broke away from my family's expectations of who I was supposed to be. In that time, I've rented a beautiful apartment in a different neighborhood, one that's just for me, one that I chose because I wanted to, not because I was trying to prove anything or earn anyone's approval. It's a one-bedroom in a renovated loft building, and I love it for completely different reasons than I love the condo. I love it because it's mine in a way that nothing in my childhood ever was. I've poured my energy into my work, and it paid off. I got a promotion at the beginning of March. I got a substantial raise. I got recognition from my company for a project I led that resulted in millions of dollars in development. My work means something, and I'm finally allowing myself to take pride in that. I've made new friends, people who aren't connected to my family, people who like me for who I actually am rather than what I can do for them, people who see me and value me and make me feel like I'm enough. I've gone to therapy, and I've started to understand how much of my identity had been shaped by seeking the approval of people who were never going to give it to me freely, people who had decided what I was from my earliest childhood, and had refused to update that decision even as I grew and changed, and became someone different. I've learned about boundaries. I've learned about self-respect. I've learned that saying no doesn't make you selfish, and protecting yourself doesn't make you cruel. My family and I are not in contact. My mother stopped trying to reach out around April, which honestly surprised me because I thought she would keep trying longer. My father sent me a birthday card in June, which I appreciated even though I didn't respond to it. Rebecca and I are not on speaking terms, though I do think about her and I do hope that she's okay, and I do recognize that she was just trying to do what our parents wanted her to do, just like I had been doing for most of my life. Michael reached out to me on social media in August and thanked me for cutting the cord because he said it had forced them to figure out their own solution, and they had eventually found a great apartment in a neighborhood that was actually safer for their kids, and they were happy there. So, at least something good came from it. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. People ask me if I think I was too harsh, if I think I handled it wrong, if I think I should have just let them stay in the condo temporarily. And my answer is always the same. I regret the necessity of it. I regret that my family forced me into a position where the only way I could protect myself was to burn down my relationship with them. I regret that it had to come to that. But do I regret the action itself?
No.
I don't. Because what I did was finally put myself first. I stopped being the person my family had decided I was, and I started being the person I actually am. I told them, through my actions, that my needs matter, that my boundaries matter, that I'm not just a resource to be exploited for the convenience of other people. I told them that I deserve to have nice things, that I deserve to have ownership of my own life, that I deserve to make my own decisions without having to consult a family committee first. And yes, I did it in a harsh way. Yes, I did it without giving them the opportunity to explain or apologize or do better. Yes, I essentially destroyed my relationship with my entire family in one fell swoop. But sometimes, that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to be the villain in somebody else's story in order to be the hero in your own. This is the Christmas betrayal that changed my entire life. This is the moment when I stopped asking for permission to be myself. This is when I learned that sometimes, love has to take a back seat to self-respect. This is when I learned that family is not automatically deserving of your loyalty, your sacrifice, or your resources. This is when I learned that being a good daughter doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And I've never regretted it for a single moment since. So if you're out there and you're in a situation where your family is trying to take advantage of you, where they're trying to manipulate you into doing something you don't want to do, where they're trying to make you feel guilty for having boundaries and wanting to protect yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that you don't owe anyone your home, your time, your money, or your sanity, even if that person is family. I want you to know that sometimes burning a bridge is the only way to keep yourself from drowning. This is Elizabeth Monroe, and this is my story. Thank you for listening.